Learning a new language, it really feels like you're building something from the ground up. You start with just one simple word, right? Like hola. And then, brick by brick, you somehow construct this incredible ability to express your entire world. So today, we're going to unpack the blueprint for that whole process, and we'll be using Spanish as our guide.
I mean, it can seriously seem like magic, can't it? You see people switching so easily between languages, and you just have to wonder, how did they even get there? What were the exact steps? Well, you know what? It's not magic. It's a process, and that's exactly what we're going to map out right now. So here's our roadmap for this journey. We're going to start with that very first connection, just saying hello. Then we'll move on to labeling the world around us. After that, we'll get into the fun stuff, sharing what we love. From there, our conversations get way richer, and finally, we'll see how to weave all those pieces into complex, interesting thoughts. It's a really logical path from just observing to actually expressing.
All right, let's dive into part one, the first hola. Look, before you can have any kind of conversation, you've got to know how to start one. This stage is all about building that initial foundation, the absolute non-negotiable essentials for just making contact.
But before we even get to that first word, I want you to just take a second and look at this number, 21. That's how many countries, besides Spain, have Spanish as an official language. We're talking from Mexico all the way down to Argentina, even over to Equatorial Guinea. So you're not just learning a language, you're unlocking a key to this massive, incredibly diverse part of our world. It's huge.
So where do you actually begin? Well, right here, with the very keys to the door. Simple greetings and farewells. Hola. Buenos días. Adiós. Hasta luego. These aren't just vocabulary words, They are the tools that let you open and close every single human interaction you're going to have. They're the bedrock of connection. And now for something that's a total game changer, especially if you've ever struggled with English spelling. The Spanish alphabet is like a cheat code for pronunciation. It is so phonetic, which means once you learn the sound each letter makes, you can look at pretty much any new word and say it right the first time. This is your essential toolkit for sounding out the entire language.
Okay, on to section 2, describing your world. So you've opened the door with hola. Now what? Well, you start putting names to things. This is the stage where you go from just simple greetings to actually talking about the world. And you start with the most important stuff, yourself and all the things you can see.
The absolute cornerstone of describing anything is the verb ser. Think of this as your identity verb. It's all about the permanent, essential nature of a thing. Yo soy de los Estados Unidos. I am from the United States. That's a core part of who I am. Tú eres un estudiante. You are a student. It defines who and what things are.
Now here's a concept that can feel a little weird for us English speakers: grammatical gender. In Spanish, every single noun, and I mean every noun, is either masculine or feminine, and it has nothing to do with biology, it's just a system of organization. So el libro, the book, is masculine, but la mesa, the table, is feminine. It's a really fundamental shift in how you categorize the world around you.
So once you have your nouns, you got to bring them to life, right? And that's where adjectives come in. They're just like the colors on an artist's palette. But here's the trick. In Spanish, the adjective has to change to match the gender of the noun. So you'd say un chico alto for a tall boy, but una chica alta for a tall girl. It's this little agreement that lets you paint a really clear and accurate picture with your words.
All right, section 3, sharing your passions. Now, this is a huge turning point. Seriously, this is where the language stops being about just describing the outside world and starts being about describing your world. We're talking opinions, hobbies, what you love. You're starting to share who you really are. Here is a perfect example of learning to think in a totally new way. In English, we say, I like the book. Pretty simple, right? The focus is on I. But in Spanish, the whole structure flips. You say, me gusta el libro, which literally translates to, the book is pleasing to me. The book is the one doing the action. It's a small but really fascinating twist that kind of forces you to rethink how you express likes and dislikes.
So how do you talk about what you actually do? Well, you need verbs, the engines of the language. And here's some good news. Spanish verbs are incredibly organized. The vast majority of them fall into one of 3 regular patterns based on their endings: are, er, or ir. Once you learn the rules for these 3 groups, it's like you have a machine that lets you use thousands of different verbs. You've just unlocked the ability to talk about everything from speaking, to eating, to living.
And now for Section 4, expanding your universe. At this stage, your world of conversation gets so much bigger. You start moving beyond just yourself to talk about your family, your job, and even more complex ideas, like the different ways that we can know something. Okay, now we've arrived at one of the most famous and powerful distinctions in the entire Spanish language: the two different verbs for to be. We already met ser, which is for permanent things, for identity. Its partner is estar, which is for temporary states or locations, and the difference is huge. For example, saying yo soy aburrido means I am a boring person. That's my identity. But yo estoy aburrido means I am bored right now. It's just a temporary feeling. Nailing this one concept adds incredible depth to what you can say.
So as your universe gets bigger, you need a way to organize all this new information. This is where you start learning vocabulary in chunks, right? All based on themes. You'll learn all the words for family, then a bunch for professions, then for hobbies. It's like you're building different toolkits in your brain, so whenever a conversation turns to a new topic, you're ready to go.
And here's another one of those subtle but really profound differences. In English, we just have one verb, to know, but Spanish makes a distinction. You use saber for knowing facts or information, but you use conocer when you're familiar with a person or a place. So you might saber that Paris is the capital of France, but if you've actually walked its streets, you conocer the city itself. It's this amazing layer of meaning that makes you be more precise about what you know.
All right, here we go, our final section, building complex thoughts. You can think of this as the construction phase. We've got all our materials, our nouns, verbs, adjectives, and now we're going to start assembling them into more complicated structures that can describe routines, sequences, and actions as they're happening.
A fantastic way to practice this is by just describing your daily routine. This brings in something called reflexive verbs, which is just when the action is being done to yourself. See, you don't just lift, you lift yourself up. Me levanto. You don't just brush the teeth, you brush your own teeth. Me cepillo los dientes. It's how you talk about your personal life in a really natural, fluid way.
And finally, to make your language feel really alive and in the moment, you learn the present progressive. This is basically the ing form in English. It's for describing what is happening right now. Not I speak, but estoy hablando. I am speaking, in this very second. This is the tool that brings that dynamic, unfolding reality into your speech.
So let's step back for a second. We've gone from a simple hola to conjugating verbs, figuring out the difference between ser and estar, and describing our daily routines. We've really built a structure, piece by piece. But what's the bigger result here? What does all this work get you?
And that, right there, is the ultimate destination of this whole journey. Because you see, you haven't just learned new words for the same old things. Not at all. You've learned entirely new categories for things, brand new structures for your feelings, and new ways to build a thought from the ground up. You've literally installed a new operating system for reality. This journey gives you a new pair of eyes to see the world with. So the only question left is, what are you going to look at first?